And that's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
That's right, Greta. It is Friday. It's the most important and fun day of the week because it's the day the Heartland Institute broadcasts the Climate Realism Show. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jim Lakely. I'm the Vice President of the Heartland Institute, and we have a fantastic show for you today with a very, very special guest. There's no other show like the Climate Realism Show streaming anywhere, so I hope that you will like, share, subscribe, personally tell folks about it, and also, after the show, leave things in the comments. Leave comments in there. That really helps the algorithm, an algorithm that is, frankly, aimed against us. And if you want to watch it live, which we do every day at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, you can participate in the live chat and have your questions answered and have a lot of fun with the other people that are with you there. And I kind of alluded to it, but this is a reminder that big tech and the legacy media do not like the way we cover climate and energy news and policy on this program. In fact, Heartland's YouTube channel has been demonetized. So if you want to support this program, and I really hope you do, you can go to heartland.org/TCRS. That's heartland.org/TCRS. That stands for the Climate Realism Show. And you can help us make sure that we keep making sure we keep this show happening every single week. Any support that you can give us is greatly appreciated. And we also want to share, thank our streaming partners for the show today. This is a new thing, and we're really excited about it. It is Junk Science and CFACT. And what's up with that? Which you'll learn a little bit more about in a minute. But they're friends of the Heartland Institute in the climate realism space. They do fantastic work with us and on their own to fight climate alarmism. So I hope you will visit and bookmark their websites, follow them on X. And along with this show is pretty much all you're going to need to know to break through all the climate hype and lies that you get from the mainstream media. So thank you to our streaming partners. Well, let's get started. Today we have with us, as usual, Dr. H. Sterling Burnett. He is the, I have to change the camera there. Here we go. H. Sterling Burnett, he's the director of the Arthur B. Robinson Center on Climate and Environmental Policy at the Heartland Institute. We also have Anthony Watts, senior fellow at the Heartland Institute and publisher of the most influential website in the world on climate, and that is What's Up With That? And also, of course, Linnea Lueken, research fellow for energy and environment policy here at the Heartland Institute. And our special guest coming back to the show for a second time is Lois Perry. Lois is a regular commentator on the BBC and GBN News in the UK, and along with other big media outlets. And like the Heartland Institute does here in the United States, Lois is fighting against climate alarmism and destructive green energy foolishness in the United Kingdom with tireless energy and good humor. A happy warrior. Welcome to the show again, Lois, and welcome everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Good to be back on. I'm afraid Lois has got a bigger battle than even us right now.
Oh, by a lot.
Yeah,
I really have, and with no hope on the horizon. At least you've got some hope in Mr. Trump, President Trump. We don't seem to have any hope at all. We have one uni-party at the moment, with the exception of Nigel Farage's party, the Reform Party in Parliament. They've got 5 MPs. They are committed to an anti-net zero agenda, but it really is only them. It really is.
Right. Well, what would be a soccer mom in this country, but perhaps football mom in your country, was arrested for a social media post that the government didn't like and was deemed dangerous, and she was arrested. She was thrown in jail. What's going on over there in the UK, Lois? I mean, thanks for the Magna Carta, but I think freedom is over.
Well, absolutely. And, we talked very briefly previously, we've had pretty good run of it, haven't we, in terms of freedom in this country? I accepted your thanks for the Magna Carta and all of that. But it seems you can wave a machete, shout Allah Akbar, or kill the Jews or whatever. And that's absolutely fine. But if you protest against, taking away freedom of speech, or if you're, anything like that, you're a soccer mum, you are going to have your face pushed into the pavement, and you're going to be arrested. And a lady was arrested yesterday, a 55-year-old woman, for doing misinformation on Twitter. And Jim, how long is it going to be before what we're doing, what you do so amazingly at the Heartland Institute and with this fantastic program, is illegal? And you get a knock on your door, or actually, it'll probably be me first. It'll be me first, won't it? So.
What could go wrong with the government deciding what's misinformation and what's not? I
Absolutely. I mean, I've read a few things about. Obviously, the term Orwellian is thrown around quite, liberally these days. Excuse the pun, but not even Orwell could have foreseen this. I mean, what is going on? I don't even know. I don't even recognise my country at the moment. It's like an alien place in terms of attitudes and behaviours. It really is. We've gone full Marxist. My beautiful country. It's really, really sad and frightening.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the main topic of this podcast today. We wanted to have you on because about going full socialist. You guys are going full socialist. You've embraced socialized medicine for quite a long time, and now you're going to try to get socialized energy, I guess, and we'll see how great that works out. We'll get to that in a minute. But I did want to, you mentioned Nigel Farage, and I just wanted to let our audience know that Nigel Farage is going to be the keynote speaker at the Heartland Institute's 40th anniversary benefit dinner at the Hilton Chicago. It'll be in Chicago, I guess, about a month after the Democrats tear the city apart. I'm sure they'll have it all cleaned up a month later, which will be nice. By September 13th, we are pretty confident that the fires will be put out and everything will be nice. But it'll be fiery inside because Nigel Farage is going to be our keynote speaker. And I know that you and he are friends and certainly allies in the freedom movement. It's going to be really something else.
Yeah. I will be attending as well, and it's I can't wait. And congratulations, happy birthday to you guys. How wonderful to be 40. I tell you what, just from my own experience, and being in your 40s is great. So it's definitely my favourite decade. So hopefully it will be an even better decade for the Heartland Institute.
Right. Well, I'm still only in my early 30s, so I don't quite know what you're
going to do. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I just I finally stopped being carded when I go into bars.
Right. That's right. Okay. So anyway, everybody watching and listening, please go to heartland.org. You are not going to want to miss meeting and hearing Nigel Farage. I know he's going to give a inspiring speech. And if you're a fan of Hillsdale College, which is probably the most important institution in the United States, educating young people about freedom and liberty and American exceptionalism and the Constitution and all the things that they need to know if they're going to be a generation that saves America in the decades ahead. Larry Arnn, the president of Hillsdale College, is getting the Heartland Liberty Prize at our benefit dinner on September 13th. That's a Friday coming up in just a little more than a month. It's going to be a fantastic event. I hope you can go to heartland.org and get more information and get your tickets, and we will see you there. All right. Now we have a lot of fun on the show, and one of our favorite segments is we call it the crazy climate news of the week, and we kick around some ideas, Lois, that we see, the crazy stories we see, and it's hard to kind of narrow it down to just three, and I try to cut it down to just three. We'll see if we can do that today. But I like to have our exploding and burning electric vehicle update. So our first story today is from the Wall Street Journal. This was international news, actually. Huge fire sparked by a Mercedes-Benz EV adds to safety concerns dogging the industry. The story has in here that it took just seconds for an underground South Korean residential parking lot to be engulfed in flames. The culprit was a Mercedes-Benz EQE electric vehicle that hadn't even been charging. The blaze incinerated dozens of cars nearby, scorched another 100 vehicles, and forced hundreds of residents to emergency shelters as the buildings above the parking lot lost power and electricity. Nobody died, thank God, but the fire took 8 hours to extinguish. The blaze dominated national news in South Korea, and some organizations are pushing for EVs to be parked outdoors only, and residents are protesting, and lawmakers are proposing new safety measures. Now, the consternation in South Korea, home to Hyundai and Kia, and some top battery makers as well, represents the latest test of faith for an EV industry dogged by safety concerns. This story states this: internal combustion engine cars are more likely to catch fire than EVs, according to South Korea's National Fire Agency. I don't believe that. Yeah. But when EVs do burst into flames, the rechargeable lithium-ion batteries get hotter and the fire takes longer to stamp out. Now, we got some videos on this stuff to show you, and I will, as I asked Sterling, since you're the biggest EV fan on this program, you love them, you just love EVs.
I do. I wrote
how long can this continue, my friend? I mean, this is... if this, I say it all the time on this pod, if these cars were not mandatory, they would be justified to be banned.
They would be banned. That's just it.
Burn up?
The Consumer Product Safety Commission, were it not for government possibly pushing them, it would have pulled them from the market before now. This, there's no evidence that the Corvair from the 1960s ever killed anybody. Ever was less safe than any other vehicle at the time. One book had it pulled from the market. It doesn't matter how damaging these things are, how much property damage they do, how much it's not just EV cars, it's EV buses, it's EV scooters killing people in New York. It's EV battery factories. It's backup battery factories. I wrote about this in Climate Change Weekly this week, by the way. I encourage everyone to read it. The Mercedes, everyone's talking about this Mercedes, right? And rightly so. It was in a parking garage underneath an apartment. They had to clear out the apartments. It's not just that it put off the power, but it puts out toxic fumes. It destroyed dozens of cars around it. It did damage to more than 100. How would your insurer like that? Yeah, I parked 20 spaces away from this EV, and I now have smoke and other damage. I'm reporting.
I think this thing needs a soundtrack. I think maybe Johnny Cash "Ring of Fire" would work for this, and it burned.
But the thing is, that wasn't the only EV fire in South Korea. I mean, in South Korea this past week, they had a Kia catch on fire in an underground garage as well. The fire department was able to drag it out of the garage and put it out before it did a lot of damage. But do cars, internal combustion engine cars, catch fire? Sure, you get into an accident, they might catch fire. What they don't do is sit in your driveway and suddenly burst into flames. They don't do that spontaneously. EV cars do. And when they do, when a truck overturns and it catches fire, they put the fire out pretty quickly. When an EV battery truck overturns on a highway in Las Vegas, as it did last week, and overturns, highways are closed for 5 days. And then they still don't get the fire put out. They push the truck into the desert, 100 yards away from the highway, build a berm around it, and let it burn itself out. This technology is a danger to life and property. And not only will I not have it in my home, but I don't think anyone living near me should have it any more than they should be allowed to set up a shooting range in their backyard. And Lord knows I like shooting, but I don't want bullets flying over my fence.
Right. Well, Anthony, I mean, this car, so I wanted to tell the audience here. So there's two clips here I've melded together, and this is, it's really going crazy. The first one is the red car. That's in China. That's a car just charging, quietly, but not so quietly when it explodes. And then here, The second clip is that parking garage fire in South Korea. So kind of have it on a loop because it's just fascinating to me. But
yeah, it's amazing. This is a worldwide problem. It's happening everywhere. I mean, we see it in the United States, China, Korea. It's becoming a theme and a meme. And the only thing I can think of to solve this problem is we get Boeing to work on it.
Well, I think what's notable too is, it's not like these are all just like, low level, like cheapy ones that are doing this. You have a nice Mercedes there that just burst into flames. So it's not like it's all some sketchy manufacturing or something or some error. This is just a feature of these vehicles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just two things
comes along with your satellite radio, spontaneous combustion and satellite radio. The spontaneous combustion is a free feature.
Right. Well, if you look at the Chinese vehicle fire, I mean, a guy got there with a fire extinguisher pretty quickly, and it didn't have any effect at all. The fire got bigger. It's as if he put gasoline on it, not or oxygen on it, not CO2. But I actually looked up. Wait, hold on just 1 second, Loves. I looked up the Mercedes electric vehicle prices here at a local dealership, the Chicagoland area. The cheapest sedan of a Mercedes is $85,000, and the most expensive is $147,000. And so you're paying super premium prices, and then just hoping your car doesn't spontaneously combust.
You're looking at this all wrong, Jim. That is a feature. It's a selling point. You can barbecue. You don't have to buy charcoal or anything. You can barbecue with your Mercedes.
Well, one of the things that we successfully did with my anti-net zero organization, the only properly anti-net zero organization of the last 3 years, which was CAR26, we actually successfully campaigned to get with the previous Conservative government to get the ban for petrol and diesel vehicles and motorbikes pushed back, because it was going to be 2030. We got it pushed back to 2035. The hope would be that we'd be able to just get it kicked into the long grass further and further along. But this insane communist government that's just come in, Ed Miliband, who I had a bit of a, not altercation, but a bit of an interesting chat with once at a party. It was a BBC party, actually. I don't know how I got in there. I must have sneaked in, but he's one of the first things he's done is brought it back. So it's going to be 2030 now. The plan is to have no new petrol or diesel vehicles made, produced after 2030. There's no infrastructure for electric vehicles. The public don't want them. In fact, electric vehicle sales have collapsed. And when you take out the fact that people are being forced to buy them for companies, leases, things like that, this is all about, and I've said this a million times on television in the UK, this is nothing to do with saving the planet. How do they think the electricity gets made? I mean, I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but it's made using fossil fuels. They are not powering electric trucks or cars using windmills or butterfly flutters. It's coming from fossil fuels. And, this is about keeping people in their homes. This is about disempowering working people, middle-class people. And as you say, with the costs so prohibitively high, this is a case of we are all equal, but some of us are more equal than others, Only the people at the very top of these extreme left-wing ideologies will be the ones that can drive around in these cars that nobody wants and $100,000 or whatever. Yeah. So, very sad state of affairs in the UK.
Yeah. Well, sorry to hear that. It might be
in
better
New York,
over there than here.
Look, in New York, EV scooters were considered the largest source of fires. They're a danger. They kill people in homes. One charging EV scooter exploded, caught a home on fire. 12 people dead, or not there. It was 12 people in India. It was, I think, I don't know how many people died in the one fire in New York. But in a scooter fire in a showroom, this is you got a showroom with a building on top of it. A scooter fire caught fire. 12 people dead. A battery plant fire in San Diego in May burned for 11 days. They couldn't put it out. They evacuated the people around the plant. They they issued a shelter-in-place order for the nearby prison. They were very concerned about the prisoners. Shelter in place, like they were going anywhere. And then there's the big fire over in I forget which country it was. Like I said, you can read Climate Change Weekly, but it's one after the other, where people are dying. This isn't some. It's not just that it's expensive. If my house burns down, it's not good. I'm not happy. But when people are dying, this is a more serious thing. And when they're dying because of specific government policy, that makes it even worse. The government should not be mandating things that they know are killing people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a big high-rise fire started by an electric vehicle in a parking garage. It's going to kill many, many people one of these days. It's just a matter of time. So, all right, let's actually get on to some actually better news in crazy climate news. And it is a video I came across this week. Vivek Ramaswamy, who ran for president as a Republican and was considered a front runner to be Donald Trump's VP selection, apparently has his own podcast. And he had on Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban is a billionaire who's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, star of Shark Tank, and also an obnoxious leftist lout on Twitter X, especially when it comes to the climate. So I want to play some of this because it's one of those rare conversations that I think we need to see more of. And that is of a climate alarmist and a climate realist, well, trying to have a very real conversation. And I think actually organizations like ours, including yours, Lois, and the Climate Realist movement, has something to do with this being possible. So I'm going to play that right now.
To me, I believe climate change is real. I believe it's man-made. And if that is the case, I'm going to be for anything that mitigates that risk. Because there's nothing more important to me in the value chain, right, in my risk analysis and dealing with probability than what's going to create the best world for my kids.
So I'll say a word about my own views on climate change. We don't have to debate this because the more important part is the business part, although we can debate the climate change part too. So do I believe global surface temperatures are going up? Yes, I do. Do I believe that there are man-made causes that may be playing a role in that? It appears plausible that could actually be the case. However, I do not believe that is anywhere near an existential risk for humanity. And
so let's just talk probability. Okay, go ahead.
So just a couple facts, because you could put probabilities around it. But if you look at the hard realities, are 8 times as many people die of cold temperatures today rather than warm ones. The Earth is now covered by more green surface area today than it was a century ago because carbon dioxide is actually sustenance, plant food, effectively.
Okay.
And the right answer to all of these temperature-related deaths, cold or hot, is more abundant and plentiful access to energy, which requires fossil fuels. So
what if you're wrong?
What's that?
What if you're wrong? What if you're wrong?
Yeah, so there's some scale problem.
What's because we don't know. Nobody knows for certain, right?
So the what if you're wrong argument, I can engage with that. Right? Because I think that's a legitimate. Even if there's a 1% chance you're wrong, how do you know? My only answer to that is you could be wrong in both directions, right?
Of course you can. Of course you can. But in my case, it costs money. In your case, my kids could be French fries, and their kids could have no chance.
So that debate's going to go on for a really long time, and I'm super interested in that. I've got a book coming out later this year evaluating all of the different angles on this for part of that. The part I'm interested in, though, for the business point, okay? Why should it be an individual business or a CEO that takes into account what they're doing for their own business to address climate change? Would that not make your business less competitive relative to Chinese peers?
Well, it depends. No,
none of whom, by the way, give the first care about climate change.
Now, Anthony, I want to go to you first because you've been doing the climate realism stuff longer than any of us. But it seems to me that Vivek had him almost there. Then he went right into the panic mode again.
He was almost there. You're right. I could see the dumbfoundedness starting to sink in his facial expression there. And Mark Cuban was like searching for, how do I refute this? And so finally he just sidestepped it. He sidestepped all the facts and said, well, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? You know, and literally, that's how he did it. And it's typical of climate alarmists, where they just simply sidestep any facts that you put out there, no matter how mild they might be. They just sidestep it and say, well, what if you're wrong? The earth is going to burn up. My children are going to be French fries. Where do they get this stuff?
Well,
and
the response, the response that Ramaswamy should have had, had maybe he been prepared, had he read more Heartland stuff, for instance, was that nobody's going to be French fries. There's no evidence whatsoever that a 1 degree rise in temperature is going to fry anyone. Secondly, he shouldn't have let him get away with.
Wait. We should have said chips for Lois.
Yeah,
that's right, chips.
there's, and he shouldn't have let him get away with. Oh well, that's just dollars. That's just cost. One is your kids dying, right? No, it's death either way. How many people die today from lack of access to modern energy systems and modern agriculture built on modern energy systems? Millions every day, not 100 years in the future. And so it's death versus death. And as Ramaswamy was right, cold kills more people than heat. So the response was, you're wrong, Mark. Your grandchildren, you're right. Your grandchildren won't fry regardless because they'll be in a nice air-conditioned building, right? You're a billionaire. But you know what? A lot of people are dying now that are dying unnecessarily. And it will get worse in the future if we follow your advice and jettison fossil fuels on the off chance that in the future, the temperature will rise a little bit and seas will rise a little bit. And we can't do what the Dutch have done for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
You're muted, Jim.
It's just amazing, watching people like Mark Cuban. And I've seen this look and this attitude time and time again. They are completely unreachable. They are absolutely convinced that climate change is a threat. We're going to burn up in the future if we don't do something, and climate models are more valuable than looking at what's happened in the past or what's happening now. They are full on board with disaster is in our future and we have to do something now. And that's the problem with this. How do you put the brakes on something like this when you've got, this sort of, errant behavior going on in someone's head where they can't stop to look at what's really happening?
I think it's to do with a lack of faith, people not being religious. I mean, because it's a classic death cult, the whole, we're all going to burn up, we're all going to die for our sins, our abundance, our, all of the decadence and everything. And it's even got its saints, Greta Thunberg and people like that. And I think the less people have faith in God or something bigger than themselves, whatever they may choose to call it, the more they're inclined to go down the route of these suicide death cults. Because, as you say, without abundant access to energy, or without access to abundant energy, I should say rather, people do die, and they die very, very young, as we can see in countries which don't have the access that you guys do and that we do at the moment before the blackouts start with this new nonsense energy company that our energy secretary has started. So I do firmly believe that people want to believe in something and they want to punish themselves as well. It's a quite a strange human phenomenon, and this is the most recent. But just going back to another point, Greta Thunberg, I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But also it shows you it's nothing to do with the climate, because she has switched from like one day to the next from being the pro net zero girl to being on pro Hamas and pro Palestine marches calling for the genocide of the Jews, shouting from the river to the sea and all of that. So it just shows you how these extreme left views can be so easily transferred. She anti-capitalist, pro Hamas, and pro net zero. They just switch around. It's just a Marxist agenda, I think.
Let me say something. Anthony said self-flagellation. Cuban's doing no self-flagellation. He's not giving up his jets. He's not giving up his houses or his cars. He's not flagellating. He wants to whip you.
Right.
He wants to whip you, not himself. He's not sacrificing anything. His life isn't changing a whit. Maybe he buys a second electric Hummer. Oh, that's a sacrifice, a $150,000 vehicle that he drives on occasion.
All right, I didn't think that would trigger so many people so badly. I thought it was an encouraging sign that Vivek Ramaswamy was basically running down as if we handed him talking points of truth and data-based science to him before he spoke. So the fact that a person as smart as Vivek, who is not a specialist in climate policy like we are on this podcast, can have at the top of his head facts that are stated with such clarity and authority that a lot of them got past Mark Cuban before he realized he was agreeing with him. Like the earth is getting greener, that humans may have played some part. It's plausible, but we don't know. So I congratulate Vivek for that. Vivek, I know you're still working on your book. I have several good candidates to help you with your climate change chapter. Just go to heartland.org, find my email. We'll hook you up. We'll do it for free as well. It's great. All right. One last item. And
so if you want to donate, that'd be great.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. All right. So one last item here. And this is, I thought this story would have died a few weeks ago, but it's the ongoing disaster with the offshore wind debacle over there off of Nantucket, off Massachusetts. And I know there's a lot of offshore wind in the UK, Lois, so we'll be asking you about that in a minute. But so if you're not familiar with this incident, so debris from the failed Vineyard wind turbine has washed ashore now in Falmouth, town officials said, weeks after a blade broke off and fell into the ocean. Falmouth, by the way, is on Cape Cod, not Nantucket. The turbine, manufactured by GE Vernova and part of the Vineyard Wind Project, failed on July 13th. And debris has scattered across nearby beaches, angering residents on Nantucket and now in Cape Cod. Preliminary investigation said it was due to a manufacturing deviation. Apparently, the glue, the adhesive wasn't very good, so it shredded apart. The turbine failed at Vineyards Wind Offshore Farm, about 15 miles south of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And so right now they have boats in the water, trying to scoop up all of this debris. I would assume these are not sailboats, but these are boats that are using diesel-powered engines. All this from one single blade on one single turbine coming apart. I'm going to share some pictures here. I'm going to add this here. Here we go. This is the actual blade. I found a picture of this. This is the turbine that's out in the ocean. Each one of those blades is as tall as the Statue of Liberty.
What?
And this is my little map. This is somewhat to scale, but we have our little wind turbine sitting out there, 15 miles south of Nantucket. And a month later, one single blade, there's pieces of that blade washing up on shore 40 miles away. This is a disaster, and it's one freaking blade. Now, Lois, I know there's tons of offshore wind in the UK, in the North Sea, for instance, off Shetland and all of that. Did they just make them better up there? And we make them like crap in this country because all this disaster could happen from one blade on one turbine. It seems like this is not very safe for the environment.
It isn't safe for the environment. And we all know about the damage that they do to wildlife and things like that. So basically, I alluded earlier to the Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary. One of the first things that this new Marxist government has done is they pretended to everyone that they were setting up a new energy company, that they were basically going to nationalize energy. It couldn't be further from the truth. So there's a thing called the Great British Energy Company, which is supposed to. I'm so sorry. I'm just on a Zoom. Can I call you back? Okay, thanks. Bye. So sorry. So the first thing he wanted to do was put all this money into renewables. You want to quadruple onshore wind, double offshore wind and solar capacity and all of that stuff. And it's complete and utter nonsense. It's just an investment vehicle, basically. But the money that they want to put in, they've got an initial seed capital of 8.3 billion. Well, bearing in mind a very low quote for just 3 offshore wind farms recently was 10 billion. The figures don't really add up. But the main beneficiary, and I say this so sadly because I'm a committed monarchist, like a lot of people on the right in this country, the king is making so much money from this. He really is. I mean, he's set to make 9 billion over 10 years from offshore wind, because obviously he owns all the sea up, out to, I think it's 25 miles off the coastline. So yeah, he's making an absolute fortune. And the Crown Estate, the company that looks after all the affairs for the king, is actually done a deal with the Labour Party before they even got into power to team up with this great British energy debacle. It's just not going to happen. What are they going to do when the grid's totally intermittent? He's offered no understanding about what they're going to do for backup and all of that. Any gas backup that they'd have to have for electricity would be so expensive, because speculators would make sure that it just hasn't been thought through. And it just seems like maybe people who've done some donations or something are going to get some payback from the public purse. Subsidies. But the worst thing is that they said that it was going to save the British consumer all of this money, whereas everyone knows it's not, and they've peddled right back on it now. And at the same time as they're giving away, hang on, let me just work this out, £11.6 billion in overseas aid to combat climate change, they've abolished the £300 winter fuel payment for all but the very poorest pensioners in this country. So you can imagine the anger at the moment. Everyone's furious, absolutely furious. Yeah. So yeah, we have offshore wind. We hate it. We pay 3 to 4 times more for our energy, sometimes up to 8 times more than you guys, because we're not fracking. It's very sad.
You say anger, and yet they elected this clown, knowing that he was worse than even the previous government on these issues. So
yes and no.
They're either snookered or something. But as far as the North Sea, perhaps the Crown just doesn't care about the Scottish coast, because, well, Scotland wants independence. So if stuff washes up on their coast, who cares? And if it washes up on the Nordic countries' coast, who cares about that? What we do know from studies in Scotland is that there's a huge microplastics problem. Now, maybe people aren't really that concerned about microplastics, but I hear about it a lot. I hear the environmentalists tell me that we're destroying the ocean with microplastics, and we're destroying fields with microplastic, it turns out, because these turbines, even when they don't just collapse, even when the blades don't shred, just break apart, they're constantly shedding plastics off the edge in the wind and in storms as they're battered, putting that stuff into the oceans if it's offshore, and on the land, making some of it unfarmable when it's onshore because of the microplastics. And there's a problem. People say, oh, climate's the most important thing, but then they go and say, oh, we got to do something about plastics in the ocean. Well, look, you got 2 opposing forces here, and wind is adding to the one problem. You can't get around it. It's not green if by green you mean having no environmental impact, because it has a huge impact directly and in the production of the turbines and everything else.
The thing about this Vineyard Wind project is that there's supposed to be, I believe, 62 turbines offshore, and they've only built a third of them. Now they've had to shut them all down because they have to figure out why this was such a failure. And so this project is supposed to be 3 times larger than it is, and it's just one project. It's just 3 times. It's going to be 3 times the size it is now, and there's already these problems that are shutting down the beaches in the middle of summer in high tourism season in all these places. I gotta say, I do not have much sympathy for them. These are the kinds of people that want this, that buy into the Mark Cubans of the world, if you will, that buy into this nonsense. And now they have the beautiful, clean, green energy washing up on their shores and ruining their summers. So, oh well.
Well, the plastic in that picture did look green, so maybe.
No, that's true. That's true. All right. Well, we're going to get a little deeper.
Sorry, about the North Sea. We've actually decided, our government's decided to shut down, not only start the decommissioning of all of oil and gas wells that are offshore in the North Sea, but actually grant no new licenses for oil and gas exploration in the North Sea as well. So not only, they're just completely committed to making sure we have zero energy independence whatsoever, and all those jobs are going to be lost. All of those jobs.
That's such a shame. I knew a couple people from Scotland who worked North Sea, and they came to work in the Gulf just temporarily while work was slow up there. And there's some good people. It's probably like some of the best work that people without a full, college degree can get.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to lose all that money from the North Sea too if they shut it down. I mean, now I guess that's why they're replacing it with all this wind, but the wind itself, it is a net revenue drain, not a net revenue producer. It requires government funding. It doesn't provide funding for the government.
They don't care about it. They don't believe in capitalism. It's not a concern for them. In fact, the worse it is for ordinary people and for the economy, the more the merrier. They love it. They want to annihilate the Western way of life, absolutely annihilate it. And unfortunately, they're making quite a good start of it here in the UK.
Well, Russia did that for 50 years and it collapsed. In the end, you can't spend your whole life in any government, and we're about to find this out here, I guarantee, deficit spending. You have to have revenue coming in. And the North Sea provides
revenue.
I'll
be 90 in 50 years. I don't want to wait that long.
Well, true. All right. Well, let's get to that main topic then. We have something funny to share at the end from Anthony that he shared with us in our Slack this week. But let's get to this main topic, and it's about the great what is called the Great British Energy Company. And Don, if you can bring that website up for us, we can have a look here. And so let me just read some of this government propaganda for the audience, and then Lois, maybe you can pop in here and tell us what's really going on, and we can all
I'd love to
have a good laugh. So this propaganda, this is an official government website. It says, "We will make Britain a clean energy superpower. The first step to achieving that is to set up Great British Energy. It will be a company owned by the British people to deliver power back to the British people. We believe people in this country should own and benefit from our natural resources, and Great British Energy is the first step to ending the UK's energy insecurity." So, it's not enough, I guess, to have socialized medicine, Lois, the National Health Service. Now you have to have socialized energy production, just like Venezuela. It's going to be wonderful. Excellent.
Well, absolutely. Although socialism would probably be quite welcome compared to this lot. I mean, Trotsky hasn't got a patch on our dear leader, Keir Starmer. I don't even know where to start on how ridiculously stupid all of this is. I mean, if they really believed in energy independence and just blowing my own trumpet. I know you Americans don't mind blowing your own trumpet, but we were the ones that actually made a big deal, my organization, about the need for energy independence and sovereign energy and being self-reliant. We were the ones that pushed that narrative. And then the Tories had to start talking about it, and now the Labour Party are too. But if they really believed in it, we would be fracking. We would have nationalised fracking, but they clearly don't. But I mean, I think it was the EU quite recently said that, by the way, we've decided nuclear is green. So they've rebranded nuclear now. And so apparently that's going to be brought into the mix at a later point. Well, it's going to have to be a much later point because it takes, I'm sure, well, you guys will know this much better than me, but isn't it at least 10 to 15 years to get nuclear get it going? So, this is all totally disingenuous. It's totally and utterly fake. And the idea that it's going to be, as I say, creating any kind of energy independence or lowering people's bills is a downright straight lie. It really is. It makes me really angry. Sorry, Jim.
That is just fine. Yeah. But see, it goes on here. It also says that it's going to be headquartered in Scotland and be paid for by a windfall tax on oil and gas giants. Great British Energy will invest in clean power projects all across the UK, such as wind farms, which are the cheapest forms of electricity generation to build and to operate. Yeah, that's what they say. This will help make our country energy independent, kicking tyrants like Putin to the curb, tackling climate change, and saving families money. And of course, it'll create all of these jobs. So that's a pretty good sales pitch. It's the same sales pitch we get here in the United States. Is it going? I guess it's not going over any better in Britain than it is here.
Yeah, well, in further news, war is peace, freedom is slavery, and the pigs have gone to live in the farmhouse and everybody else is completely stukkered. This is, I don't know what to say. I really don't. It is such a load of baloney. But I don't think the British public are buying it. I mean, our most recent polling that we did, our YouGov polling that we did for CAR26, showed that for the first time ever since we'd started the project, started our campaign 3 years ago, over half of those surveyed didn't believe that man was responsible for any kind of climate change. So the British public aren't buying it. And, institutes like yours, smaller organisations, that bow down to you guys like mine, and I hope that we've had a big part of that. As you said earlier, the fact that guy had the arguments to counteract the billionaire is because he's heard it on shows like yours.
And evidently he couldn't have that argument in the UK now, so there you go. But
I've been banned from a couple of stations now, even ones that you would have thought before would have been on our side. It's quite sad, actually. It really is. So I'm not persona non grata everywhere, though. Thank goodness.
It is sort of frightening just how far the Orwellian road we've gone down when they can consistently, Jim pointed out, consistently claim wind is cheaper. Wind is cheaper. If it's cheaper, why does the government keep having to subsidize it to keep it afloat?
Exactly.
Why, when they're building more wind all the time, the cheapest, freest form of energy there is, are utility rates going up and up and up? Because it's not cheaper. One, the facts belie the claims. It's one of those things. Are you going to believe your electricity bill, or are you going to believe what we're telling you about your electricity bill, which is it's cheaper even as you pay more?
Well, you're thinking, Sterling, what your problem there is that you're thinking that the government can actually do math and understand engineering. They don't.
Oh, I have no illusions about that. They just lie. They're politicians, their mouths move, they lie.
Yeah. So just one last bit on this. So is this a real thing? Is the UK actually going to do this? I mean, this was a proposal by Keir Starmer, the new Prime Minister.
No, it's already been
announcing it and doing it are two different things. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's happening. It's just as I say, it's been billed as a state-owned energy company, but it's not an energy company at all. As I said, it's an investment vehicle, and the figures that they're talking about putting in are minuscule compared to what would be needed. I mean, for example, I read today that for 1 day's worth of storage, just 1 day in the United Kingdom, we'd need a battery that cost 100 billion quid. Well, good luck with the 8.3 billion, Ed, because that's not going to buy you not even 1/10 of 1 day's battery storage. I think they better get back to the drawing board. Unless, hey, how weird, maybe this isn't about saving the planet. Who'd have thought it?
That's
wow.
Crazy talk.
That's pretty cynical, Lois. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Linnea, we're going to go to Q&A here in a minute, so you can get ready for that. But I wanted to give Lois another opportunity to talk about her friend Nigel, who is coming with us to our benefit dinner on September 13th. That's a Friday coming up in a few weeks. I guess a lot of our listeners, they may not know much about Nigel. We know about him, and I always assume other people know what I know, but they might not. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Nigel and his fight against net zero and socialism that you're also a part of?
Well, Nigel is quite possibly the most significant politician of definitely of the last 50 years. I mean, he's regularly talked about, and in the last 100 years, in the same breath as Churchill and Margaret Thatcher, he fought absolutely tirelessly and against massive odds to get us the referendum and to have us removed from the European Union. He's a passionate believer in democracy, in Parliament, and in all of those things, and in us having our own independence. He is a very passionate man. He's an extremely intelligent man, and he is one of the, if not, he is definitely one of the most famous individuals in the United Kingdom, and he's definitely the most famous politician. He surprised everyone when the election was called very early by our former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. He surprised everybody by actually changing his mind and decided to run as an MP because he knew that the momentum was behind him. And not only did he finally, after decades of trying, and I believe it was 8 attempts of running to be an MP, not only did he get into Parliament, but he got 4 other MPs as well. So we now have the only party in Parliament which speaks, I believe, for normal British people, that that is anti-net zero, that does believe that certain topics should be discussed, like immigration, things like that. That does believe that people should have a right to be free, to have freedom of speech, to not have to pay all their money over in taxes. There's a reason that him and Donald Trump are like that. They're singing off the same hymn sheet. And I'm delighted that he's been a supporter of me and my organisation. And he actually credits me with, steering him towards the anti-net zero stuff, which is very nice of him. And I can tell you now, he's excited and delighted to be attending your event next month.
That is fantastic news. And we are very, very much looking forward to seeing him and you as well.
Thank you.
Yep. So again, get your tickets at heartland.org. It's on September 13th. All right. We're going to switch over to Q&A, but I just wanted to share something before we get into that. Anthony, well, let me just set this up. I'll throw this up here in the thing. So, hurricane came through Florida the other day, right, Anthony? And, it's only Category 1, so those Floridians are pretty used to it, so they don't take it quite as seriously as maybe the Weather Channel does.
Yep. And so we've got Florida man out there on his boat photobombing the Weather Channel. He's wearing nothing but a yellow inflatable inner tube. And, this happens pretty regularly with the media. They do something where they're out there telling everybody how terrible this storm is, and somebody in the background does something hilarious. A few years ago, it was somebody walking by, you see this scene of this reporter and this water behind them, and the way they framed it makes it look like, it's super deep. And then there's these 2 guys just kind of walking along. Then there was the famous one where this reporter was in a canoe, for the flood. And again, somebody just walks by because the water's only this deep. It's just,
right.
It's hilarious what the media does to try to make these weather events look like disasters. And then somebody like this guy comes along and just blows them out of the water.
Yeah, so to speak. Okay.
I don't think it's the only thing that might have been blown out of the water, looking at his attire.
That's right. Yeah, they make it pretty tough in Florida. Yeah, that hurricane came up around where the peninsula and the panhandle come together. So good on them. Good on the people.
Well, Linnea's been suffering from the tropical storm for most of the week. So.
Right. That's right.
Decided to just sit and tap dance on top of us. It's
right.
all right.
You can see even the Weather Channel guy. I think he knows what's going on behind.
And I think the Weather Channel reporter is actually seeing this in his monitor. They've got a monitor there so they can see themselves. I think he's seeing this because you can see he's got kind of a grin on his face.
He's trying not to laugh out loud.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that, Anthony. So, all right, let's get into the question and answer period. I'm sure, Lois, there might be a question or two for you. We get some science questions. This show is tries to be a public service. And Linnea, take it away.
All right. Well, we have a lot of questions this time, so that's good. Our first one is, okay, this is a science question. So I'm going to pitch this to Anthony and see what he thinks. Question from Itsy Toe says, can you explain someday why solar irradiance has so much different values between satellites?
Well, there are different sensors. You know, the satellites don't match up. And that's one of the problems we've got with sea level acceleration. We've got all these different satellites. You know, the satellites have a lifespan of, 5 to 8 years, something like that. And so they've had these satellites measuring sea level since around 1990 or so. And they keep changing the satellite, changing the sensor. And there's this impression when you plot all the data from these satellites that there's an acceleration going on. But it's actually just an artifact of the data and an artifact of the measuring system. But that doesn't stop climate alarmists from saying that, sea level is accelerating. The satellites proved it, when it's absolutely wrong.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there's definitely inconsistencies. And the first thing that popped into my mind is, are we measuring apples to apples with the solar irradiance on these satellites, or are we measuring at the same time from satellites on one side of the planet or the other? Because that would be, if it was cloaked behind the planet, that would be a pretty good reason for why the solar irradiance is being measured differently. Next question is from a longtime viewer and friend of ours, Albert. He says, are you going to talk about the northern sea route in Canada that's still closed, frozen? That wasn't on the schedule today, but and I'm not sure if that's something that's actually occurred or not. Maybe someone else on the panel knows.
They've been claiming for a couple of decades now that we would finally have the northern route through the Arctic with all the melting. You remember back in the 1800s, this was longed for. They wanted a shortcut for trade across the top of the world. They didn't want to have to go around the tips of South America or Africa to get through. So explorers were trying to find the northern route. A couple of decades ago, they were predicting it was about to happen. In fact, they had to stop shipping in the north early this year because there was too much ice already. So we had a big decline in the early in early 2000s. It was declined from a high point. So it looked pretty steep, and that's when they were making their predictions. It turns out it's stabilized, and at least in the last year, it's expanded. Like I said, they had to close the shipping up there early.
Thank you. All right, from Energy Colonizer, this is for you, Lois. He asks,
Okay.
how are native British faring in winter with utility bills and possibly freezing to death while illegal alien utility bills are likely subsidized?
Well, I mean, it's been really, really tough. I mean, obviously, it's summer at the moment. It's actually too hot at the moment, although it's called the summer. No need to get stressed out. But no, it's been really, really difficult. There were cases in the winter just gone of elderly people who froze to death, who were found by family members a few days later. There was this phrase, choosing between heating or eating, which a lot of people were having to do. Last year, I did a tour of the north of England and interviewed lots of people. There were women who were having to switch their fridges off because they couldn't afford to have the heating on and their fridge on, and so their babies weren't getting, the milk was going off and stuff like that. So, it is true that, and this is causing a lot of resentment at the moment. There are people that are coming in quite often illegally on small boats, which is one of the things that Nigel Farage has been pointing out. Nigel Farage MP. That everything's covered for them, and it does cause a lot of resentment. But yeah, people are really, really, really struggling. And I mentioned earlier, when we've got this 11.6 billion pounds in overseas aid to combat the climate crisis that's been committed to, and they're cutting £300 a winter for pensioners, elderly people, when energy prices are through the roof. We haven't even begun to see the devastation that will bring. So yeah, we're quite a stoic lot, us Brits, but yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a lot more deaths this winter because of this nonsense. Definitely.
It's just awful. I'm going to pitch another one to you here, Lois, since you're on a roll. Do you think the organization Just Stop Oil is tied to British intelligence? And that's from Terry Barnes.
Well, I mean, you know they won't come on television with me now. There was an edict from apparently right from the very top of the organisation in New York that they wouldn't come on with Lois Perry from CAR26 because I got this guy, this Just Stop Oil guy, to admit on GB News that they were funded by Getty oil money. And apparently Just Stop Oil hierarchy weren't very happy about that. But I mean, it's just come out, hasn't it, that one of the subsidiary companies of one of Hillary Clinton's charities, I believe, or one of her companies was also funding Just Stop Oil. So I don't know if it's linked to British intelligence, but what I do know is that it's definitely funded by oil money. And, there are some high-profile people, for example, a guy called Dal Vince. He's benefited enormously from subsidies from the UK government for net zero stuff. And he owns a company that does renewable electricity and things like that. And he's spoken out in favour, and I think has put money into Just Stop Oil. So, it's very, very strange, especially when you've got people that own airlines. You find out that through subsidiary companies or charities, they're putting money into Just Stop Oil. But I do get what he's saying, because sometimes you do think, how are they getting this paint into the museums? How are they getting so close to these great masters, these paintings, everything? Is there insider knowledge? Why aren't their bags being checked? So I can see why he may think that, but I don't have any insider knowledge to say whether that's true or not, I'm afraid.
It's not surprising to me that oil companies are funding this stuff. And it's not just that they want to burnish their images. Look, major oil companies are enormous. When smaller oil companies go out of business, they profit more. And it's the smaller ones that can't deal with the regulations.
So no more new oil and gas licenses benefit the bigger companies. Yes, I did say that once. You're right. Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me if they shut down their competition and they've got the existing wells. Good for them as far as they're concerned.
Yeah.
Right. Or they buy them off of the small companies as they're selling their assets.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff, that kind of thing.
They go to the fire sales and purchase their assets.
Good stuff. Okay, here's kind of a fun one from Redneck Screwloose. He says, who called it? Rand, Orwell, or Huxley? And I want to answer this first. Although I lean towards Huxley because Brave New World, which I think is his, is distressingly correct. But I actually am going to give you one that's not on your list, and that's Lewis. That Hideous Strength is a under-referenced book, mostly because it's the third in a series, but I would say C.S. Lewis's That Hideous Strength is actually the best one out of all of them for that.
Well, I think Rand, I'm not sure if she's dead on or hit or missed the mark entirely, because the thing about Rand is, at least in Atlas Shrugged, the capable withdrew their consent. So they went off to their small island and society collapsed. As far as I can tell, they're not withdrawing their consent. It's society's collapsing. Don't get me wrong. But it's not because the capable have said, no, we're not going to put up with this anymore. You can tax us till the end. We just withdraw. We won't keep our companies running. We'll instead, people like Boeing, just keep throwing money at us for our Starliner. we'll stay afloat. You know, don't regulate us too hard on our falling airplanes. And if we do, we'll just go to the government. You know, get car companies. We'll do whatever you want. You want electric, we'll go electric. Just all you got to do is throw enough money at us. We'll keep it afloat. We'll lose $40,000 a vehicle. So, you know, as much as I'd like to see the capable withdrawing consent and hopefully they'd have a place for a little philosopher in their, you know, Randian kingdom, a philosopher pirate. I'd be willing to play that role. I'm afraid Orwell is closest to the mark. Though we do have a lot of people on drugs and zombified, just like Huxley anticipated. I just don't know that the government is passing it out to everybody.
Well, during the lockdown, I was noticing, I mean, I didn't take any notice. I was driving around and doing, you know, I was virtually on my own driving around, but I was driving around. And I was noticing people dropping drugs off and stuff like that at houses and things. And I thought, well, if I noticed it, and I'm not a professional I'm not a policeman, then the police are letting this happen. They must be. I mean, I'm not going to go full conspiracy theory, but if me, you know, a middle-aged mum can see it, then surely law enforcement officers would be able to notice it. And it was completely right. It was almost like keeping them quiet in their homes. But going back to the question, I don't think it's going to surprise you that much, you know, with the amount of quotations that I've done, that it's got to be Mr. Eric Blair. It's got to be George Orwell himself. Yeah, he called it. He really did. I wish he hadn't, but he really did.
Anthony or Jim, you want to pitch in on that one?
Oh, I mean, I think they all got it, is what I think. There's aspects of modern life in each one of those books. There's no doubt about it. That's pretty depressing. It would have been bad enough just for one, but we have all three.
You know who didn't get it? Thomas More, Utopia.
Here's Chris Martz, a friend of ours and a very big personality on X. I believe he now is working at interning at CFACT, I think. He's a friend of ours. He says there were a lot of right-wing victories in European elections. How effective will this be to derail the green agenda?
Is that for
we
me?
covered some of that. It can be for you, and we'll probably also have a little bit to pitch in because we've been covering stuff in the Netherlands and whatnot for a while here.
Yeah, I mean, well, the UK, it does seem to be going against the grain, as I'm sure you're aware. The rest of Europe is, you know, with Giorgia Meloni and you know, the other things that are going on, that it's an increasingly anti-net zero agenda. So, which makes the behaviour of our government seem even more insane. But if they're going anti-net zero and we're going to be unfortunately dependent on them for our energy, then I suppose that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, but we are the right will unite. The Tories will rise up again and they'll do something with reform. I'm absolutely certain, and I think Nigel Farage will be the one to lead that. And when he does, net zero will not be top of the agenda. I can assure you of that.
Yeah, I do think that they're attempting to. A lot of European countries are attempting on their own to squirm out of it, but the European Union which is why Brexit was such a stroke of genius. The European Union really has quite a bit of control over how these countries approach agriculture and stuff. And that for what we've been covering at Climate Realism, the agriculture angle is one of the most frightening. A lot of European countries are being pressured to basically end agriculture in their countries. I know in the UK I think it was last winter or something, there was a bad spot of weather in Africa, which a lot of produce comes from, into the UK. And so you had some like empty shelves in the grocery stores because of it. And the government was blaming the markets, the grocery, the shop.
That's the other one they pull out the bag most of the time.
Yeah. And so they're blaming the grocery stores for whatever, for capitalism or whatever it is that they're mad at them for. So versus, it's not like you can grow papaya or something in the UK, but it's still, if you were self-sufficiency is going to be important. And on such a small landmass, and especially with a lot of European countries are so much smaller. We in the United States have a little bit of a difficult time wrapping our heads around this when you look at the vast amounts of land that our country is able to dedicate to growing produce compared to individual European countries. It's quite a bit of a difference. So the green stuff, banning fertilizers that help to improve yields and all of that makes it a lot worse. I'm going to answer this one really fast from Very Futile, who says, how is the efficiency regarding nuclear versus wind power per megawatt hour? I don't know about efficiency off the top of my head, but I do know in terms of land use, nuclear is about 12.7 acres per megawatt. And then solar is 43.5 acres per megawatt. So it's quite a bit. And wind is also up there. I don't have the number directly in front of me, but
wind is bigger than solar. Land use, land space, the footprint. And as far as efficiency, I can't put it in megawatts. What I know is we have closed nuclear plants over the past decade and a half. Despite that, the supply of nuclear energy has remained nearly constant. And that's because their efficiencies are so high and they've improved. There are currently nuclear plants that are running regularly at 104% of capacity. In other words, they're producing 4% more energy than they were rated to produce when they were brought online. There is not a wind plant anywhere. We have added 6 gigawatts over the last, I think, 4 years of wind energy, and our wind production actually declined last year for the first time. We're producing less power from wind as we add more wind power. So the efficiencies aren't even, realistically comparable.
Right. With wind, there's something called a braking effect, which they've actually studied in the North Sea quite a bit, where when you put in bigger fields of wind turbines, they actually cut down the amount of wind that's making it to turbines further down the line, downwind. Yeah. So it's not so good.
Well, Lois, you asked before, how long does it take to get a nuclear plant online in the United States?
Yeah.
And you guessed 10 or 15 years. I mean, I'm guessing right now, but my memory of this is that it's more like 30 years, that there are still some projects that are not approved, and they just run into every single roadblock imaginable because we do not have an energy grid designed by engineers. We have energy grid now designed by politicians, and it's going to fail. It's going to fail spectacularly, and we'll all be here to see it, unfortunately.
Yeah, nightmare.
Okay, let's see. This is a good one from someone on Rumble. LT Oracle of Truth asks, how can we overcome the indoctrination of 2 to 3 generations of our people being taught that climate change is an existential threat to humanity? And I'll pitch that to the panel at large.
Well, my kids don't believe in it, but then that's hardly surprising, is it? But actually, my son is 21, Lola's nearly 14, and they are not woke. And this whole net zero thing is seen in the UK as a woke thing. And there is skepticism. They don't like being told they're going to burn they're going to burn to death. They don't like being told what they cannot say. They hate having all trans stuff pushed down their throats. And it's seen as part of the same agenda, which of course it is. So, I don't know. I've got some faith. I have faith from talking to my son's friends and my daughter's friends. They're just not interested. They just want to get on, just be normal kids.
First, I'd like to say that's a really good and tough question because it is multiple generations now. I liked someone said, show them Linnea's short videos. Michael Johansson said that. I think if we got Climate at a Glance booklets in their hands, but I don't think it's an easy one. For me personally, look, I have no children, but I have nieces and grandnieces and nephews. And I found that they care a lot. They become a lot less concerned about climate change when you go and you take away their cell phones and devices and say, look, you're killing the planet by charging these things. It's you're concerned. I want you to live the lifestyle that you're concerned about. Let me go into your closets and start taking out clothes that were made with fossil fuels. Suddenly they find, oh, wait, I'm not going to die tomorrow. Let's calm down on this. Suddenly they discover that maybe they're not quite as concerned about frying as they were before I started saying, let's live that lifestyle. Give me your cell phone.
Yeah, I think young people too. It's the polling in general tends to show that the majority of people will at least pay lip service to the idea that humans are causing climate change, and that maybe it might be something to be concerned about. But I think that the constant drumbeat is actually starting to backfire. Constantly posting alarmist stories saying, this is the hottest day ever. This is the hottest day ever. Yesterday was the hottest day ever. Australia is warming faster than the rest of the world. Canada is warming faster than the rest of the world. Those kinds of things. People do pick up on that. And I think, well, one, I do think that a lot of this is media driven, and I think the media is aware of it. It's not just that you learned it in school. Half of what you learn in school as a kid, at least going to public school or whatever, it just goes in your ears for the exam and goes right out of them after the exam is taken. So I don't think, the indoctrination in public schools especially is bad, but I think it's the media drumbeat that is the main driver of it, but it's also starting to counteract a little bit just because it's so much. Right. It's everything.
Yeah, I mean, polling does show that younger people are not nearly as indoctrinated in climate alarmism as you would expect, considering it's been 25 straight years of nothing but the polar bears are dying. They're going to go extinct. They're not going to go extinct. They're growing. It's all of this. So considering all the propaganda, the fact that it's not 100%, that who was it who said, give me your kids and you've given me your future, something like that. But, if they figure if they indoctrinated the kids, this green revolution should have already been completed by now based on their strategy. And it hasn't been. And I don't think it actually ever eventually will be. Kids have better BS detectors than you think.
Well, one factor is kids, a lot of kids just don't want to do what their parents, they automatically, if your parent says it, oh, well, that's got to be wrong because they don't understand my generation. They don't understand me, the old focus. And secondly, you've got back across the pond, Churchill's old adage, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you have no heart. If you're still a liberal when you're older, you have no brain. A lot of people who worry about climate change now, as they get older and start having to pay for this stuff, suddenly it's, they're more worried about their kids' education, their healthcare system, whether they can retire. It's easy to protest when your parents are still paying your bills and you don't have to go to work.
Absolutely. And the young people love Nigel and they love reform. They're big fans because he's huge on TikTok. And it's the young people, the teenagers and everything. They just, they just think they're much more to the right than younger generations normally are, because they're just sick of it. They're sick of it all being rammed down their throats. Totally.
Yep. Okay. We've got a couple more questions, but we only have time for one. So I'm just going to pull up the one that is directed to Lois that we have. So this is from Michael Johansson. Aren't there any climate realistic conservatives left in the UK?
Well, I'm here. So yeah, there's at least one. And as I said, fortunately, for the first time in a long time, we have members of parliament who have it in their manifesto that the first thing that they will do when they get into power, go to coalition with the Tories, whatever happens, will be that they will abolish all net zero policies. And that is a massive, massive sea change. I can tell you that, because absolutely everyone was in step. They were in step for such a long time. And, you know, the great man's going to be coming to meet you guys next month, so you can thank him.
Well, thank you so much, Lois. I think that's going to be it for us then, huh, Jim?
It is. I'm sorry. I meant to tell Donnie in the background to cue up the music for us when we leave, and instead I told the whole chat. Oh well. But Lois Perry, it's been our pleasure to have you on the Climate Realism Show today. You are a delight. You are brave. You are tireless, and you are going to be in Chicago on September 13th with us at Nigel Farage, and we cannot wait. It's going to be fantastic to see you in person.
Thank you. With the best dress you've ever seen.
Yes.
Ever.
Yes.
Okay.
You've put us all to shame on the live stream here with the outfit today, and I cannot wait to see what you show up with on September 13th. So thank you all to our viewers and listeners of this podcast. Thank you, Anthony Watts of What's Up With That, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute, H. Sterling Burnett, the Director of our Robinson Center on Climate here at Heartland, and Linnea Lueken, Research Fellow. Thank you to Donnie Kendall in the background doing some producing for us, and thank you to our streaming partners, Junk Science, CFACT, Climate Depot, and What's Up With That. It was a pleasure to have you all here on the show today, and we will talk to you next week.